Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to make a little mini journal, binding it with Coptic binding stitch. So let me show you what I have here. I had two pieces of card which I cut out to make my journal. Now all I did was have some scraps of card lying around the house, so I trimmed them all to one size, and that determined my size of my journal covers. So then I covered the outside and wrapped over the front, and then cut a slightly smaller piece and put it on the inside. I've used fabric, so I just found that that wears really nicely, but you could do that with paper. And I glued this down with a glue stick, so that makes it easy. Then I had these little offcuts, and I have 5 pieces on each little section, and I have got 5 altogether. So 5 pages in each section which have been folded over, and 5 sections there. Now I want to actually join them together. So what I have done is I've cut my cover of my journal slightly bigger than the paper, and you will be able to see that there on the sides, and in the front it will also come to the front as well, but the sides are what is most important. And then about 1 centimeter in from the edge of my journal, I have made little holes on my card about 2 centimeters apart, and it will depend on the size of your book that you're going to be making as to how far you want your spacing. So I'm just having 3 sets of holes in mine, and that will be just so that I can do this quite nice and quickly with you. So I used those guidelines on my cover to actually then measure the designs onto my little sections here. And now what I'll do is actually make holes in each of these pages. So I've got pencil marks here. You want to just make sure that your pages are together, and you could use the point of a compass, or this is just a quilling tool that I'm using, just to make a hole so that it's big enough for your needle to be able to go through. So I normally don't press terribly hard to begin with, but once I've lifted up, just make the hole slightly bigger. And then just because I'm going to be stitching sometimes from the outside, sometimes from the inside, I just turn my card over and make sure that the hole is clean on both sides so that I can get the needle in either way. All right, so now I have punched holes in all of my little sections here, and I have holes in my cover. And so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm taking this lovely bright green embroidery cotton to be able to stitch. You can use wax thread if you're doing a larger area. It's going to make it much easier to do that. So I'm taking my first section of my book and my cover, and I've got a knot at the end of my thread here. So I'm going to come in from the inside of my book, and I come to the outside, over the outside of my cover, and I'm just going to pull that tight. Now get your stitching nice and firm. And then you're going to wrap over this and come through this hole. Okay? So you're kind of locking it in place. Sometimes if you're working with a longish thread, it will want to twist and tangle, and that, just be patient, it's going to work out all together. So then I'm going to come through from the inside of my book, and you'll see that you're getting the colors showing through in the inside, over the cover. Okay? And here you can lift the outside of your section down, get it out the way so that your hands are free. Then take your thread from the left across to the right, so that you're almost forming a little knot here. This will actually act as a hinge. And the one thing that's really nice about this Coptic binding stitch is that when you open up your little booklet to work on it, your pages actually lie flat, unlike a lot of other journal stitches where the pages tend to buckle a bit. So then you're going to press in back through that hole, which is now in the center of your book, and you'll see that you've got a little lock knot there, and come through to this edge right on the left. Again, you're going to push through to the back, lift your pages out the way so that you can actually see what you're doing. This little gap that you see here between the cover and the section that you're working on is normal, so don't be panicked about that. And just be a little bit cautious about pulling your stitches too tight. You don't want them loose, but you don't want them so tight that the book doesn't open at all. So again, we're going over the thread. Oopsie. Just getting that nicely secure, bringing it up again on the left-hand side. Right, and now instead of going back into that one, I'm now going to go into my next section of my book. So I'm now going to go through that one, into that hole. So you'll see that I started off working from right to left, and now I'm going the second way through from left to right. Now when I come here, instead of going between the cover and the book as such, I'm going to go over, down 3 between the first slot of pages and the cover, come up again on the left hand side of the thread, which again is making that little lock stitch, and you'll see when it's completed, it's a bit like a chain stitch. Open up my book, pull my thread through to the front, and this will stabilize once you've got a few of these together. And now I'm going to come in through my last one. Oopsie. Always bearing in mind. So again, I'm coming down through between the book cover and the first little section that I've done. You could actually just push that one through, bring it up. And now I'm going to add my next section to this. So I'm just picking up, quite important that you keep your pages stacked as to the way you punch the holes, because then they will line up nicely. So I'm going to go through into my next section, and you can see I'm starting to form a little chain looking stitch here. Oopsie, where's this hole? Okay, right. Come through that middle one, and then down between the second and the third sections. And I want to come up down on the right hand side and up on the left. And when you are making these journals for the first time, don't be overly ambitious and start with a huge one. Start with a little mini one like I'm doing. Then you actually get a feel for what is involved, and it's easier to actually make it a pleasurable experience. I tackled a big one my first time around. You know, I just thought, oh, I'll do this. It won't be so difficult. But I did find it was a little bit challenging to begin with, to learn the stitches and try and hold everything together and get it looking neat. So this would be my advice, is just start with a small one. It can be a nice little pocket journal that you can have in your bag wherever you're going, or your backpack, and just put in whatever you need, a few notes, a few drawings as you're going along. Right, so we're just going to continue like this until we have all the sections together. And if you have a look there now, it's got quite a nice woven stitch. Okay, mistake, I shouldn't have gone through that hole. I should have picked up my next section. Anyway, not to worry. So we go through the next one now. And because you measured your holes nicely to begin with, you're going to find that this will be easily lined up once you've got your stitching done. So now we're going to go between this section that we've just added and the previous one. Lift that page out the way and bring the needle up there. And then just secure it nicely, make it nice and snug, like so. Here we go, and into that last hole. Right, down between the previous section. So all the time you're just locking the stitches in place. And now we're going to pick up the last section here and add that in. And you can see this hasn't taken that long. I sometimes, if I've got something to listen to, then I actually just sit and cut up my card so that I'm ready for the next little booklet I want to make. And I will show you some pictures of some of the other journals I've made. It is really quite fun, and it's a lovely gift for somebody. Really well treasured, I think, because it's handmade and you can make it so personal. Right, so you're just adding in the last section, like that. You're going to go back in here between the threads. And now we get to this very last bit. And I like to have contrasting colors, threads as part of the detail. You could always add in things like embellishments if you wanted to. Now you're going to go over the outside of the cover. So you're going to come through this hole. Remember here we've got the stitches that go over the cover. So you're going to go over the cover, so you can see that. Pull it down nice and securely. And then we're going to go over the back of that first section to loop it. There we go. And then we're going to go into this first section that we did here. Get that nice and secure. We're going to come up through that last section. We're going to go over the cover, through the back, oops, through the back, and then we're going to bring this up between the last section and the second last so that we're locking the stitches. Let me just drop it down. I think it's going to be easier. When you're doing this at home and you're not trying to show it on camera, you could work with this flat on the table, which is slightly easier than what I'm doing at the moment, but I'm trying to let you actually see the stitch. Right, so we've come through there, and now we just want to secure this nicely. Get our stitch in through this last section. Oh dear, running into all sorts of problems right at the end. Isn't that always the case? Threads getting tangled. Okay, let's see what's happened here. There we go. Now we're just going to come through this last one, through that last hole, over the outside edge of the cover. And then what you want to do in the inside is just to secure it with a knot and cut a bit of a tail so that it is slightly longer. Oopsie, sorry about bumping the camera.